Tech War will continue right after this.
Back when baseball truly was the national pastime, ball players were heroes and great teams played their way into legend. Now, Sports Illustrated brings you remarkable full-color home movie footage of baseball's glory days in the award-winning 2-video set, When It Was a Game. And best of all, both videos are free with your paid subscription to Sports Illustrated. When It Was a Game features never-before-seen home movie footage shot by the players themselves, bringing the ghosts of baseball's past to life. There's Gehrig and the Babe, Williams and DiMaggio, Mantle and Mays. Call now and get both of these award-winning videos, along with 54 issues of Sports Illustrated, including the spectacular baseball and football previews, and of course our famous swimsuit issue. For only $1.47 an issue, you save over 50% off the cover price. When It Was a Game takes you on a trip back in time to an era when baseball was larger than life. It's a dramatic look at the game's greatest players and most heroic figures. In When It Was a Game, you'll see Hammerin' Hank as a kid and Jackie Robinson in Dodger Blue. You'll travel to Ebbets Field, Fenway Park, and Wrigley Field before the Ivy. It's all here, and it's all in spectacular color. Don't miss this chance to own rare home movie footage of baseball's glorious past. Call now, subscribe to Sports Illustrated, and get your 2-video set absolutely free. For quicker delivery, use your credit card. There's nothing like the magic of When It Was a Game, and there's nothing in the world like Sports Illustrated. Get into it.
And now back to Tech War.
I'm satisfied, are you? Thank you. Aren't you glad Jesus got him and the world didn't keep him? Jesus needs him. You may be seated. Is Zenobia back there? I'm sorry, I don't see. Stand up, sweetheart, would you please? So glad you came today. The Lord bless you. Amen. They send in missions money to us every month, as well as so many of these other ministries here, because they know John had a heart for missions. Thank you, my Father. I wanted to tell you about some people that John really loved. He loved his sister, Jackie Smith. And Jackie's here. Beautiful lady down here in the white. Jackie, you want to stand up, sweetheart? Pretty red hair. And her son's with her and daughter-in-law. You want to stand up? She's the only one left now. There were 6 of them, and all of them have gone now. And when I called her, called her to tell her about her brother, she said, I didn't want to go. I didn't want to leave him, let him go, because I didn't want him to go because I thought he had too much to do for Jesus. Well, we felt that way too, but we just wanted him to go and not live in the condition that he was in. I hope you understand that. He would not have wanted to live in the condition he was in. He said, I want to preach, and I want to preach healthy. And he was not healthy, and he had not been healthy. But that didn't mean he didn't love God. And that didn't mean he didn't trust God. The night that he died at 2 o'clock in the morning on our den floor, actually his heart stopped then. He was brain dead. He was resuscitated and on a ventilator. But Gary, my son-in-law that leads the singing, where is Gary? We had some problems with him breathing and all, and I was so tired, and he was tired, and for weeks and weeks he had not been able to sleep. And so I had gone upstairs and gotten him some pillows, and I had done everything, Mayor Brown, that I could to make him comfortable. I rubbed his back, and he was counting the time that he could go to dialysis to get some of the fluid off of his lungs. He had to start on dialysis in October, which he didn't want to do. It was such a hard decision for him, but they thought he couldn't live without it. And you know, when you want to live, when you've got a job to do, Chief Bradford, you'll do anything you can. So we trusted the doctors and all, and it was hard on him because his heart has been weakened from years and years and years of hypertension. Finally, the dialysis helped get his blood pressure down, but then it made his heart weaker and weaker and weaker. So I was in bed. Every time I'd get covered up and think I could go to sleep, he'd say, darling, would you do this? Would you do that? And finally he said, you're so tired. He said, I'm going to go in the den and I'm going to lie down on the couch and I'm just going to stay in there so you can rest. And he wasn't out of the bedroom that long until I just dropped off in a sound sleep because I really was tired. I didn't know it, but he called, come here, Gary. He called my son-in-law, Gary. This is April's husband, our youngest daughter's husband, leads the singing here, youth pastor. He had a lot of confidence. Are your mother and dad here? Dr. and Mrs. Simon, stand up, would you please? This is his mother and dad. He's a cardiovascular surgeon. Gary grew up in the operating room. He grew up around medicine, so John felt comfortable, and they lived just a few blocks from us. He said, Gary, would you come over and sit with me a little while? This was about 1 o'clock. He'd been to a men's meeting, or a meeting, to the summit in Columbus, Texas, and he was still up. He said, Daddy, I'll come right over. He stayed at the hospital with him. Son John always felt so comfortable with Gary around. He called him Daddy. He's got two daddies, Brian, you and his daddy. He's got a daddy in heaven now. And so he came on over, and I didn't know this at all because I was so sound asleep in the bedroom. And so Gary was talking to him, and he got him all comfortable and covered up real good and got him warm. And he said, Gary, he said, Mother's so tired. He said, this has been the darkest days of our lives. And he said, she's so tired. And he said, I just wanted to come in here and let her get some rest. And so Gary was talking to him, and he said, Daddy, he said, does it ever make you wonder where Jesus is when we're suffering? And he spoke up, his little voice had gotten kind of weak, and he spoke up and he said, His mercy endures forever. Just as loud as he could, His mercy endures forever. And then in about 10 seconds, his heart stopped beating. So those were the last words he said. Thank you for staying with me. His mercy endures forever. And it does. It always will endure forever and ever and ever. Dr. Bassanio, you and Aldine aren't used to this screaming. I scream a lot. John used to say, darling, don't scream so loud. When I'd pray for sick people, I'd say, devil, leave. And he said, the devil hears you whether you scream or not. I said, well, it just sounds like he hears me better if I scream. Praise the Lord. I never did find Tom Osteen. Tom, I wanted to say something about, where is Tom? Tom, stand up, please, sweetheart. I'm so glad to see you. John loved your daddy. His daddy, his father, was Jack Osteen. And you've heard lots of stories. Remember the haunted house? You remember that one? The haunted house? Tom, have you heard any of those stories that John tells about your daddy? Yeah. Listen, you know, John said I was a gambler. Remember, he was a popcorn salesman in the Isis Theater, and he was a gambler. And I said, John, were you really a gambler? And he said, well, I lost Jack's dollar in a slot machine one time. Lost your daddy's dollar. And he talked about how your daddy forgave. Said Jack was so merciful to me. Said, that's all right, little brother. So he has so many memories. I want to just tell you about some more people that John loved so much. Sam Martin, I hadn't spotted him. Everybody's changed. They usually have regular places. Sam Martin, would you stand up? This is the man that was John's high school friend that told him about Jesus and helped him to accept Jesus when he was 17. They're standing up for you, Sam. Yes. And Paula, his wife. Be seated. I don't know if John would have ever gotten saved if it hadn't been for Sam being so persistent. Started preaching on the streets and Salvation Army, any place he could find when he was 17. He tells a story he didn't know an epistle from an apostle. He thought an epistle was an apostle's wife. He didn't. He called Job, but that's all right. He grew. He might have been simple. It's simple in minded and simple in faith, but he was profound. He was a great man. Somebody else that he loved so much was Dr. Reginald B. Cherry. Reginald, Dr. Cherry, are you here? There he is. And Linda, would you stand up, please? Dr. Price, Todd Price, will you stand up, please? Dr. Todd Price and Sue. Sue, would you stand up? They've been wonderful. They've been wonderful. And they worked with John, trying to help him to find the pathway to his healing. And thank y'all for all the times he called you, for waking you up at night and all. Thank you. I'll always remember that in my heart. Somebody else that was so special to him was Johnny McGowan. Johnny, where are you? I saw him running around. Johnny would come by the house and pick up John and take him to dialysis. For a while he could drive himself, but he would come by and pick him up when he couldn't drive himself, and he'd stay there with him, and he'd go get him Kentucky Fried Chicken or whatever he wanted to eat. Too bad, Dr. Cherry. You know, he was on a low sodium diet, and it was so tasteless, so anything like that tasted good to him. But Johnny was always there for him. And the day that we took him to the hospital for the last time before his death, Johnny was there, brought him in. I went out to the garage because I heard him coming in, and John was leaning against the garage of the car, and he said, "I'm hurting so much." And Johnny came in with me, and we sat on the couch, and I rubbed his back, and he said, "Johnny, you rub me now for a while." So Johnny rubbed him. He stayed there with him, and I hugged Johnny. I said, "Johnny, thank you. Thank you for helping me." He said, "Jesus told me to." He said, "How many people would have the opportunity to sit and eat lunch with John Osteen 3 times a week?" Come here, Johnny. Come here.
Love you.